Hi, Ray. Welcome to the Move Your DNA podcast.
Hi, Katie. Thanks for having me.
I guess I should say Dr. McClanahan.
No, Ray is fine.
Okay, great. Because we know each other IRL, as the kids say in real life.
Indeed. Yeah.
So I've had you on the podcast before, and we've talked about your evolution, I would say, as a podiatrist, going from conventional shoes to minimal shoes. We've had that conversation, and I will put it in the show notes, a link back to that. But today I want to talk to you about correct toes. You are the creator of correct toes.
Mm-hmm.
How do you describe correct toes to, like, if you're at a cocktail party? I don't know if anyone does those anymore. If you're at a coffee shop and you're talking about correct toes, like, how do you explain what they are?
Yeah. I basically tell people that this toe orthotic puts people's toes back into the natural alignment that nature had intended. And for that opens up the conversation. It's kind of fascinating because it's brand new information for those people. I can't tell you how many middle-aged or adult Americans that have no idea that our feet are supposed to be widest at the tips of the toes.
Well, it doesn't match the shoes.
Indeed. Indeed. So that's what it's for. I show babies' footprints when I talk this conversation. I show people that if we didn't live in industrialized societies where we deform our feet with footwear, our feet would still be baby shaped. So I tell them correct toes is a way of getting your adult deformed feet back to their natural or their baby shaped construct, because that's where the healthiest feet in the world exist, is in that natural alignment.
You know, there's looking at a shape and going, this shape isn't, like, right. But you're a podiatrist, so I think, how does the function or someone's experience with their feet, how they feel and how they work, relate to that shape? Because it seems like more than just chasing a shape, we want to chase a function. Or
Absolutely.
so.
Yeah.
So how would you? Do you ever talk about them, correct toes, in response to how people's feet feel and work?
Absolutely. In fact, we've done a bunch of studies which we can talk about, but in terms of function, what your audience should know is when feet are positioned naturally, meaning that the widest part of the foot is the tips of the toes, the heel is level with the front of the foot, all spread out. We've done some studies. I've had multiple other people to show circulation will be better, nerve function will be better, balance will be better, foot strength, as you know, can increase by about 10% just by putting the feet back into natural alignment and stressing them. So as far as function is concerned, I'm surprised at how well we can function in conventional shoes until we break down. In fact, not a day goes by where somebody middle-aged, typically middle-aged female, says to me, you know, I've been an active person. I've kind of done whatever I want my whole life. I didn't hurt myself. I didn't sprain my ankle. And all of a sudden, one of my feet won't work.
Yeah.
And they're curious about that. And I share with them that the function of your feet has been compromised by your fashion athletic footwear. And that opens up the conversation to how do we pursue natural positioning, which will then allow natural function and comfort, and keep them out of the podiatry office.
Well, it's interesting because I've written 2 books on feet. You know, like, I know you're a podiatrist. That's an interesting topic to you. It's not really an interesting topic to a lot of people. But one of the reasons I did was not even so much about foot pain. I mean, it's helpful to know that there are things you can do to fix your feet. But the real reason that I feel so compelled to help people with their feet is because feet are often the thing that keep people from moving their whole body. So, you know, the rest of this episode, Jeanette and I are talking about cardiovascular function. And I don't think that a lot of people would associate the foot with the cardiovascular system, but a sore foot can take your whole body down. It makes it so you can't really walk. You can't, you can't go to the gym and use, there are workarounds always with injury, but in general, I think that's a big reason why a lot of people aren't moving regularly, is because their foot hurts.
It's so true. In fact, it's fascinating to me to see how many people fully become aware of the value of their feet when their feet start to hurt. And like you say, the rest of their body, they can't use the rest of their body. And I'm no longer surprised by that. And it's a very empowering journey to get them back on their paths to natural foot health. But you're right. You probably heard the old term, when your feet hurt, you hurt all over.
Uh-huh.
And it's so true. And when people experience neck pain, back pain, hip pain, knee pain, when their foot hurts, they kind of clue into the value of fully functioning feet.
Mm-hmm. And I think the thing that confuses a lot of people is, like, I've always done this. I've always worn these shoes. My feet have always looked like this. And you can kind of get by with anything when you're 20. It's kind of like drinking alcohol. You can what you can do when you're 20 is different than what you can do when you're 30, and is different than what you can do when you're 40, and just keeps going in that direction. And the feet, I think it's middle age that the feet really start to let you know that the way you've been using them is not their preference. We'll just say it that way.
Absolutely. And I like your alcohol analogy. I've been thinking a lot lately also about the food analogy.
Mhm.
When we're young, we can eat all kinds of horrible things, a lot of processed food. Even my own children, my daughters in their 20s, don't eat very well and they don't get sick. They don't feel bad. Nor did I when I was 20. And nor did I didn't drink a lot when I was 20, but another good analogy. So you're right. I oftentimes think about how miraculous our bodies are, how just fantastic they are and incredible. They will let us do a lot of bad things for a long time. Like you said, in terms of feet, a lot of people do bad things to their feet until they're 40 years old. And to your point, they get away with it. I ran marathons in fashion athletic shoes. I ran my best 5K in a size 9 Nike that was 3 sizes too small, and it was a fashion shoe. But eventually it does catch up with us. And that's what I feel so passionate about our work, is to get the message to people before they break. I want to prevent, I want to cure. I don't want to wait till that person gets to the middle age and has made all the mistakes like I did. And then we're trying to backtrack, right? We're trying to heal. Whereas if we'd have prevented things, we'd never got to that place.
It's like parenting, though. You're like, learn from my mistakes. And they're like, I'm not going to. I have to learn on my own. So definitely prevention is really helpful. But I know that the greatest number of people come to my work, and I wonder, you're a doctor, so I assume it's similar, once a problem has already showed up. But you've created Correctos. So that's what I want to talk about next. Correctos to me seems to be a solution, a prehab, not a rehab, but a prehab. It's something that you can do now that's very simple. So I want to start with, how did you come to create a product? I write a lot of books. I am not a lazy, idle person, but I feel like bringing a product to market is just a hurdle that I couldn't jump over. Like, what was that like? What was the story behind it? Like, how did you come to decide to make an orthotic device?
Yeah. In 1995, I was here in Portland doing a surgical residency, and I was operating on a lot of people that had the condition that I had at that time, which is bunion and hammer toe. So in other words, my second toe sat on top of my big toe. And I was operating on a lot of people with that. A component of the operation is to cut a muscle up the inside of the big toe, the adductor hallucis. And I kept asking the doctors who were training me, why are we cutting this muscle off of the bone? And they said, well, this problem's genetic and this is what we have to do to fix it. And I also at that time noticed that not everybody that gets bunion surgery recovers, and not everybody gets back to the activity they want to do. And worse yet, a lot of people that have bunionectomies get it repeated 8 to 10 years later because the cause isn't fixed. So I was very curious at that time in my life, and I was wondering if there's some other way to fix this problem without an operation. And then the greatest inspiration of my professional life was exposed to me through Podiatry Management magazine. Dr. William Rossi wrote an article that blew my mind and changed my life overnight. It's called Why Shoes Make Normal Gait Impossible. And in podiatry school, I know your best friend that passed, unfortunately, probably got the same training that I got, which was shoes are good. The more cushioning and the more support's good. Don't pay attention to how it's shaped. Take money from companies that make fashion athletic shoes, and that's podiatry. However, somehow, Podiatry Management decided to publish Dr. William Rossi, who was a natural podiatrist. He passed on about 10 years ago, but he got me thinking about many of the problems that we encounter may not necessarily be related to the reasons podiatrists are taught. We're taught biomechanics, genetics, overuse, et cetera, et cetera. Very little emphasis is given to the fact that we deform our feet at about age 3 in America. Dr. Rossi taught me that, and I went home that night after reading that article, and I realized if I was going to do good work, I had to go back to the clinic the next day and change. I had to overhaul. I had to stop putting people on the treadmill, looking at their pronation, making orthotics, thinking that was going to fix them, because it didn't. It would temporarily help until their feet got weak, and then they were on this constant quest for the right orthotic shoe combination, which they can never find because they're weak, deformed, and dysfunctional. So Dr. Rossi got me thinking about changing my own shoes to begin with, which I did. And he also got me thinking about the rehabilitation capacity of feet non-surgically and non-orthotically. And nobody had ever expressed that to me, although I lived in Africa growing up and I saw the capacity of bare feet to do some incredible things, which I couldn't do with my feet. So I decided that I was going to try to experiment with my own body to see if what I was being taught was correct. So I started buying these little single silicone spacers, which you can see everywhere. They're in the drugstore. We've got them on our website. And I started putting them between my first toe and second toe, then between my fourth and fifth toe. And I noticed a difference. I noticed that when I took them out, my toes were a little bit straighter, but I also noticed that the rest of my body felt better. To your earlier point, I had chronic knee pain since age 17. I had low back pain so bad occasionally I took narcotics for. And I noticed, wow, my whole body is feeling better as my toes are changing. So I started putting them between all of my toes. And at that time, I was trying to make the Olympics. So I'm doing a lot of running, and I'd get out on my run with these silicones between my toes, and they wouldn't stay in place.
Mhm.
As soon as I'd start sweating, they would move around. And no runner wants to stop their run to squish their silicone back between their toes. So I was out on a mountain bike ride with a friend of mine that does silicone molding. And I was telling him what I had in mind. And I said, why can't we just take 4 of these pieces and put it together? That way it'll stay in place. And then subsequent to that, we thought, well, what if we also make it adjustable for people like me who need to push their big toe out further as time goes by? And so we did that. And unfortunately, we made a lot of early mistakes. We made the product wrong. We made the durometer too hard, the hardness of the material. I ruptured my collateral ligament on my fourth toe by overstretching. So we made a lot of mistakes, and eventually through testing, we got down to the right durometer. We streamlined the product, and early on, we launched it probably 20 some years ago. I thought the podiatrists would be excited about this. I reached out. I used to belong to a lot of listservs, and I'd reach out to like 18,000 podiatrists. Do you guys want to try this? This can cure some things. And probably less than 10 people wanted to try it. And the ones that didn't understand it. And they said, well, it doesn't fit in my shoe. And I was trying to encourage them to understand that's the point.
Mhm.
Doesn't
But
fit.
neither does your foot.
Exactly. Exactly. So that we started that. I had the impression that I wanted to make it in America. So we did for a time. We made it in Redmond, Oregon, and found out it was cost prohibitive. We found out that the tools that we originally made were not production tools. They were prototype tools. And to your earlier point, Katie, it is quite an obstacle to launch a product. You could definitely do it. Not everybody could do it, but you
Oh,
could.
I don't think I
But
could
it
do it.
has been a journey, and we're launching some new products right now as well, which is we're back to the drawing board and back to that challenge. But that was my initial idea, was to see if it would work in my own body. Then I started telling my patients, and it's become a cornerstone of my work.
Mhm. And I feel like it was grassroots. So, you put it on a listserv in front of podiatrists thinking this will be the great way to increase uptake. People will see it and they'll pass it on, but that probably wasn't the case if you only got 10 orders. So how did how did they spread, if you will?
Yeah. Um, so we didn't even get 10 orders. I couldn't even get 10 podiatrists to be excited about it. So nobody ordered it. No podiatrist did. How it started to spread was a couple of ways. Some very significant influencers, people like Dr. Mark Cucuzella, who had surgery on both of his feet. And unfortunately, the surgeon bandaged him a deformity. And so he healed deformed. And he tried to run again. And he went back to the surgeon, and the surgeon said, well, Mark, you just have to stop running.
Mm,
And Mark's
mhm.
like a lot of us. He's like, no, I can't stop running. It's what I get joy out of. So he found minimal shoes. He found correct toes. He found chi running and some various other movement patterns. And he was able to heal himself. Now he's got the second longest sub 3 hour marathon streak in the world. He's done 33 of them. So a guy like that, as tapped into the world as he is, and as well spoken as he is, and as intelligent as he is, people take him seriously. So
Mhm.
they're like, well, if Mark found benefit in this, Mark believes in this, we're going to try this. So it was Mark, it was physical therapy, it was naturopathy, it was yoga. Because obviously, when you're in yoga, you are in your bare feet. Your yoga instructor tells you spread your toes. And I tell people, well, that's great. But if your yoga instructor wants you to spread your toes, why are you only doing that for an hour out of the day?
Mhm.
Let's get you doing it all day. So it wasn't podiatry. Ironically, however, in the last 2 or 3 years, podiatry is finally getting on board, especially the younger people, which is gratifying to see. But no, it wasn't. It wasn't podiatry. In fact, I was all excited that they were going to embrace this and see it as a new innovation. But it took 20 years. You know.
Yeah, there are no overnight it's not so much overnight success, but to distribute information takes a long time. Every time I do anything, I'm like, this is going to be amazing. Like people will be like, why didn't you tell me it was like this? But it's really, I think, the people seeking for themselves who've looked under every stone, who find you, and then it works, and then it's just sort of a grassroots spreading. Do you think you're still grassroots at this point? Uh, I'm not sure what the pinnacle of toe spreading success looks like as far as a brand goes, but um, maybe when they're hanging out, when they're in drugstores, just like the single spacers, like eventually will there be that point where this is just, oh yeah, or there's just no longer shoes that require people? How would you feel about that when all the shoes are wide and correct toes are no longer necessary?
Yeah, that I would feel fantastic about that. In fact,
Hmm.
that truly is my goal. I sort of feel sad in some ways that even though the product is wonderful and helps people, I had to make my product because other people made bad products.
Hmm.
So in other words,
Right.
if shoe designers didn't deform people's feet to begin with, there would be no need for correct toes or any kind of toe spacer. And that really is the impetus for my continuing work, is to get to people. Why don't we have the kids' feet checked at school like they check their eyes and they check their ears? And why don't the pediatricians talk to this about to mom and dad? So yeah, the shoes are getting better all the time. My friend Anya from Anya's Reviews mentioned that she thinks there's somewhere over 200 brands worldwide. So people are getting the message. Toe spacers aren't such a weird thing anymore because
Hmm.
there's tons of companies out there now. Whereas I used to go to the trade shows 20 years ago and people were like, what's this? Now I went to the running event a couple months ago and there's probably 6 different brands there. There's probably 40 brands now out there. So the word is getting out. There's some good studies on them as well, which we've done. No question, your balance is better. No question, your circulation is better. No question, your foot strength gets better. So if you're somebody who cares about your body and your feet, even if you're not in foot pain, that's the direction you want to go.
Are they considered an orthotic? Like, what is the actual clinical definition of an orthotic?
Yeah, it's to make something straight, I
Okay.
think. Yeah. So it is an orthotic, and
Hmm.
I call it a toe orthotic, and I differentiate it from arch orthotics, which I used to make a lot of. I used to work for Superfeet Northwest Podiatric Labs for about 5 years in my early career, until I read Dr. Rossi, and then I started putting people's feet on top of their Superfeet, and I noticed that their toes were wider than the Superfeet. So if you can't spread your toes, you can't control your arch.
Hmm.
And so the difference, Katie, is conventional arch supports or orthotics try to make a body part straight in an unnatural fashion. So we're not intended to have anything up under our arch.
Hmm.
Correct toes orthotics are making toes straight, which is natural, which correspondingly then helps the arch to function the way it's intended to. So the goals are the same. The arch orthotic is expensive. It has weakening effects. It adds extra weight to the shoe. People keep going back to the doctor and getting them year after year after year, versus correct toes orthotic are a temporary natural orthotic to get your toes back into alignment. And once they're in alignment, throw it away. And then just don't wear pointed shoes anymore.
Right. They're like a. So I appreciate the definition of orthotic. I didn't know that it was to keep straight, but with the correct toes, they're part of a journey to transition where an arch orthotic is it's not trying to get you anywhere. It's not trying to get you away from needing the orthotic. The orthotic becomes part of how what your feet need, just like it needs a shoe. But to the positive point, though, we're used to orthotics. Like as a culture, we're used to this idea that there's something that you can get that you can put in your shoe that makes your feet feel better. It's just changing what that orthotic is between the toes, perhaps underneath the arch. Do you have any patients that wear both? I mean, do you have, so you have patients, I mean, I imagine you're still recommending arch orthotics for some people as well, along with shoe changes?
For sure.
Yeah.
I would say a small percentage, maybe 5% of my patient population truly has a structural problem or a biomechanical deformity. It truly does happen. I could give some examples and we could go into some detail, but yes, people do use both. I have a test in my clinic that I do to try to figure out who needs just to spread their toes and get stronger, wear better shoes, who needs spread their toes, get stronger, and some help at the arch. And typically for me, in my patient population, it's going to be people who are hypermobile.
Yeah,
So
right.
the test that I do, I call it the hallux adduction test, and I've got some videos on the website. Essentially, I have the patient stand in front of me, and most of their big toes are kind of close to the second toe, if not in a slight bunion, for most everybody that I see, except the little children, which I don't see that many of them. And I ask them to pronate their arch with their toe in that deformed position, and we both observe how much pronation they're doing. Then I have them supinate their foot. I pull their big toe into natural alignment where it's supposed to be, where correct toes will put it. About 90 to 95% of people, when I ask them now to pronate, will pronate to what I would call neutral, meaning their leg is
Mhm.
over top of the middle of their foot. They don't go into overpronation. They basically go to neutral. And this is astounding to some people. In fact, I'm going to tangent off and tell you I was at a chiropractic symposium in Florida probably 3 or 4 months ago, and it was sponsored by Foot Levelers, the chiropractic orthotic company. It was a premier sponsor of this seminar. And some young chiropractic students had gone to their booth and walked on their force plate and been pathologized as being flat-footed, and you're going to have to wear this orthotic for the rest of your life. Well, they came by our booth and we were talking to them, and they're like, yeah, we got to wear these orthotics. And I said, well, let's check a couple things. Let's look, And so I had this young chiropractic student, and I did the hallux adduction test. And when I got her great toe into natural alignment, she was perfect and normal. Her arch was normal. And her girlfriends are standing there looking, and she's just like, well, what's happening? How come my arch won't go down when my toe is in alignment? And so overwhelmingly, people don't need any kind of orthotic if we get to them early. But later on in life, when they start having problems, they have the choice of doing the two of these. But to answer your question, the people that need both are people that do not stay in natural alignment when you spread their toes, or occasionally, not to confuse your audience or get too detailed, but you're familiar with valgus and varus.
Mhm.
And occasionally we'll meet somebody that truly has a valgus or a varus deformity that doesn't compensate when they're walking or when they're
Mhm.
standing. I vividly remember a lady that I still see about every 6 to 7 years. She comes in and gets her new orthotic because it helps her. In her case, I won't call it a cure, but in her case, it's what she needs, because she kept rupturing her peroneal tendons and having surgery because she had a rigid forefoot valgus. So for your audience, the front of her foot was like this in relation to the back of her foot, which was neutral.
Yeah, so I'll just, for the people who are listening mostly on audio, the front of the foot sort of angled in, but the back of the foot stays in place.
Yeah. So as soon as she started walking forward on her heel, she's fine, her foot's still neutral. But as soon as she loads her forefoot, because the front of it's down and rigid, she has to supinate massively, rapidly. And the peroneal muscles and tendons on the outside of the foot, as you know, are pronators.
Mhm.
So if that rapid supination is occurring, the peroneals basically are going to try to fight that until they break down. So she kept getting tendinosis, she kept tearing, she kept getting surgery. And after the third surgery, somebody said, you might have a structural problem. You should probably go have a look at this. And she came and she saw us, and true enough, and she only had it on one foot, which was weird. But this is probably one of my favorite orthotic success stories. We made her a beautiful orthotic with what we call a 4-foot post. And this is where podiatry shines, where people need it. However, I think podiatry overutilizes orthotics. In fact, we have a class in podiatry school where we classify each other's feet with the mindset that no matter what kind of foot type you have, there is a kind of orthotic for your foot type, which
Interesting.
I no longer believe in, and I no longer correspond to that thinking. The other thinking too is that you always wear your orthotics for the rest of your life. And when I was first making orthotics, I would send a postcard to the patients every year, much like the eye doctor would or the dentist. It's like, it's your time to come in and get your new orthotic. And I didn't do any more work. I just signed the prescription form and send it off and made another big chunk of money. So there's some economics behind it, which is needing to be challenged. And like I said, I think there's an overutilization, but sometimes people need them. And when they need them, podiatry is the place to go. But like I said, too often they're overused, and unfortunately, we don't cure people if you keep people in orthotics.
Yeah, I like that. I like that clarity. And it's interesting. I was thinking when you were talking that orthotics probably were a natural solution of a time, right? Like the idea, like, oh, you don't need a surgery. You just need this easy, natural support. It was a less invasive solution and positive for so many reasons. And maybe it got you away from pharmaceutical or surgical solution. And then that becomes a standard. And then now it just seems like as we know more and consider broader perspectives, we're starting to whittle away and say it's not so much the fixed structure, it's this. I mean, I think of it in terms of it's a strength and alignment, and it's an alignment and resulting strength that you get that can provide some of that support naturally. And that, which is not to say that we don't need pharmaceuticals and surgical interventions when we do. It's just that those don't have to be, or orthotic interventions. It's just maybe not the first place that you look, that you have the full picture in mind.
Yes, agree.
Well, okay, you mentioned new products as we're winding up. What is Correcto's future? What are some new things you have coming up?
Yeah. So we have had a lot of competition in the last couple of years. In fact, we've had people directly copy us and sell for less money. So
that's how you know you've made it, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I hope so. I appreciate you saying that. So we're coming up with 2 new products. We're coming up with a product that will be for people that may not need the full correct toes. It's going to be just for the big toe. It's going to be adjustable. We're going to be able to put material in there for people who maybe only their big toe needs help, or maybe they've got footwear that might not allow for that full spread.
Love it.
So that's one product. We've also got what we're going to call Correct Toes Sport, which is a prehab device. So we want to get to people before they need correction. So it's just going to guide people's feet into that natural alignment. The original Correct Toes was a corrective medical orthotic meant to correct deformity. So now that there's more awareness out in the community, we're hoping that this concept will be more readily accepted. And so we want to be available with a product at a lower price point to help people achieve what they want to achieve.
That's wonderful. I think those are excellent additions to the market. They're refined, and they accommodate a broader range of people who maybe don't need all toe spacers. I got to see, for those who are listening on audio, I got to see what do you call the first one? Not the sport one, but the first
stable toe.
Stable toe.
Yeah.
That's a really great addition. I'm excited to see that
Thank you,
on the
Katy.
market. And I just wanted to say, thank you for the work that you do. It takes a lot to swim upstream a little bit, and also I just wanted to say thank you for supporting the podcast. I really appreciate you doing that.
You're
as
welcome.
well.
Thank you, Katy.
All right. Thanks for coming on.